Hello everyone. Now, a few days ago, Google launched their latest Pixel 6 lineup consisting of the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. Well, launched isn't really the word for it, more like a teaser release before the actual release later in this year. And while I like the device, I was a bit unimpressed, and I actually think that the Pixel 6 lineup will actually be a sales flop and not sell in the numbers that Google is maybe hoping. Now, why would I think that? As a Google fan, as someone who already has a Google device and has owned Google devices in the past, well, I'll let you know right after the intro. So first up, we have the design, which was already leaked by John Prosser, kudos to him again, almost 2 months ago, I think at this point. And the design is a little bit divisive. It's certainly different and doesn't resemble anything out there at this point. There's basically a huge camera bar on the back of the phone, not unlike the Nexus 6P of the past, which I also happen to own and I love. But no, the design is not really the problem. The problem lies inside, the new Tensor chip specifically. And no, I'm not referring to its great prowess in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence, which Google proudly touted in front of an audience. Traditionally, this has been Google's strength. All Pixel devices so far have taken amazing photos with their great camera arrays, which lack a little bit in terms of hardware, but more than make up to it in terms of software. No, the problem with this is that, you see, because almost all of the leaks regarding this device were true so far, it means that a bunch of others are also kind of realistic. The more troubling rumors for me, though, are in terms of performance. You see, every single outlet out there tends to report the same thing, which is that Google isn't using the X1 Cortex chip in this chip design, a la Snapdragon 888, and that in fact this will be a more upper mid-range chip in terms of raw performance. There has even been a leak claiming that in raw benchmarks, so synthetic benchmarks, this chip scores comparative to the Snapdragon 870. Now that's not a huge problem in of itself because, well, guess what? The Snapdragon 870 is still a very capable chip. It's basically a rehashed 865 Plus from last year with small improvements. The Snapdragon 870 finds its way into, I don't even know how to categorize these devices, flagships for less, or entry-level flagships, or flagship killers, basically phones that have a decided value for money approach in the budget range of $300 to about $600. You see, details about pricing are a little bit unknown at this point. But The Verge quotes in their article Mr. Greg Osterloch saying it will certainly be a premium priced product. And you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to understand what premium priced product means. Whenever anyone talks about a premium priced phone, they're generally referencing the iPhone. So this means the Pixel 6 range will sit in the $800 to $1,000 plus price bracket. And that's a real big problem from a lot of points of view. Now, Google's fantastic prowess in terms of photography looks extremely impressive at under $600, like in the Pixel 4a 5G that I have. They've been selling Pixel 3as and 4as tremendously well because those are fantastic devices at low prices that can take very good photos. The situation is a little bit more complex than that when it comes to full-fledged flagships. You're gonna run into at least Samsung and Apple at that kind of price point. And if there's one thing that's true about them is that both those manufacturers usually have very powerful hardware coupled with extremely good displays, coupled with extremely good cameras for photography and video as well. So if Google intends to compete, they're gonna have to check all of those boxes. And if Google shows up in this fight with similar pricing but inferior hardware, at least on paper, that's not a great place to start. This is eerily similar of the Pixel 4 a few years back. The phone took incredibly good photos, but its hardware was not really up to spec, and the result was that it was a sales flop. And why do I say it was a flop? Well, if it sold that well, we wouldn't have a mid-range phone as a Pixel 5 a year later. And the performance figures of this Tensor chip will weigh heavily on how people perceive the launch as well, because of another recent launch of a custom chip by another manufacturer, namely Apple. Apple launched the M1 last year to great fanfare. They came out at the presentation and basically said, we have been working on this for some time and we made the most powerful, low power consumption chip out there for computers, full stop. So the image that Google is getting here will not be fantastic. Apple's been working in the shadows on their own chip for some time and then launched something that can go straight to the top of the class in terms of performance, whereas Google similarly has been working for something for several years that can't really claim the same thing. And I have a huge other problem with the Pixel 6 as well, availability. You see, Google has announced that these phones will be available in 8 countries and territories. That leaves a huge number of countries and territories not covered at all with these devices. This means that Google is non-committal. They're trying to get a hardware business going, but they don't want to go all the way. And they've done this consistently in the past. This is their third actual reboot of the hardware business. Think about it. Their first attempt was the Nexus line of devices. They shut that down, and they also exited the tablet business altogether at that point. Then they started the Pixel line, which was initially rather successful, but critically was higher priced than the previous Nexus offerings. That kind of faltered around the Pixel 4. And now, again, they're trying with the Pixel 6 to aim for these high-level, flagship-level prices, with their own chip that isn't quite as competitive in terms of raw power. That doesn't sound like a particularly good winning formula to me. And again, I hope I'm totally wrong about this because we need more competition in the smartphone market. Recently, Apple has been running away with it. They're winning market share hand over fist in the US. They're winning market share in Europe. So things don't look terribly well on the Android front. And I'm terribly disappointed of Google. After all of these years, I was expecting them not only to have an iPhone level phone launch every year, but to have an entire hardware lineup by this point. I mean, they have all the advantages in the book. They control the software from end to end. They have all the money in the world, so they can afford to get top talent to design and build better products and to establish a very good supply chain. Yet still, they seem to stumble at this. And more of the same is the last thing that they needed, because face it, their strategy hasn't been terribly successful. They're not particularly relevant in the phone hardware game, and I don't think the Pixel 6 is the device that is going to change this. I hope I'm wrong, we need more competition, but we'll have to wait and see in September or October when this phone launches. With that being said, as usual, thanks for watching. If you found the video interesting, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel for more of my content. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.